Welcome back. Just a quick review of what we learned over the last few lessons. We've learned sine law, where sine law is used for finding the side lengths using this formula here, where the side length over sine of the angle across from it is equal for each side. So side A over sine of angle A is equal to side length B over sine of angle B is equal to side C divided by sine of angle C. We've also learned the cosine law used for finding side lengths, where here this looks like the Pythagorean theorem, c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared, but we've got this addition on the end, minus 2ab cosine c. And how I remember it without really memorizing is that these two match up. So c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared minus 2 times the first letter repeated minus the second letter repeated times cosine, because it's cosine law, and this matches up to this angle here. So it would be this angle matched with this side length. Okay, so let's move forward and take a look at an example. Here, this is what you should be able to do at this point. And when I look at these triangles, I'm going to circle the pairs that I have. If I can circle two pairs, it means I'm going to be using sine law. In this case, I've got c over sine of 105 is equal to 7 over sine 35. C is equal to 7 times sine 105 divided by sine 35. Pulling out my trusty calculator. C is equal to 11.7882, but we'll round to 2 decimal places. On this triangle here, we try and circle pairs. I can circle that pair, but I cannot circle any pair with the 11 or the B or the 8 and the A. This is also side, then an angle, then a side, like a sandwich. So this is going to be using cosine law. I start with what I want to find. C squared is equal to the two other numbers squared, 11 squared plus 8 squared minus 2 times those numbers repeated, 11 times 8, times cosine of the angle that I've got, which is 37 degrees. That's the one that's in the sandwich. And if I were to put this into my calculator, c squared is equal to 44.44. As an approximation, c is equal to the square root of 44.44. C is equal to 6.67 rounded. That's a quick review. We're now moving into lesson 3, which is using cosine law to determine angles. So specifically, our learning goal for today is to determine the measure of angles in acute triangles using the cosine law. And here we can start with the derivation. Go back one spot. Let's go take a look. So here's what we know so far, and if we can rearrange this for angle C. So we're going to bring this stuff over to the other side. So c squared minus a squared minus b squared is equal to what remains over here, minus 2ab cosine c. I'm going to get rid of the negatives by multiplying both sides by negative, and that will switch these to becoming positive, and switch the c squared to becoming negative. A squared plus b squared, they're now positive. The c squared can turn into negative. C squared is equal to 2ab cosine of uppercase c. We now divide both sides by 2ab. Cosine c is equal to a squared plus b squared minus c squared, all divided by 2ab. And this is our cosine law for finding angles. So this is what you can work with. You can also see it where sometimes they represent c is equal to the cosine inverse of all this stuff. Both will work, and ultimately they will both come to the same conclusion. And again, we're using this generic triangle where we've labeled vertices A, B, and C, and across from each uppercase vertex is the lowercase value, which is the side length. So uppercase A represents angle A, and lowercase a represents side length a, and so on. You could memorize the formula for all three, a, b, and c, cosine a, cosine b, and cosine c is equal to this. However, in this case, I'm going to show you how you don't have to memorize that, and if we do it right, we should still be okay. So here we have to determine the value of angle A. So I'm going to start with cosine of A is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. So I'm looking for this one. I'm going to circle the sides that are next to it. So it's going to be 13 squared plus 15 squared minus the one that's across from it. There is only one other number, 12 squared, divided by 2 times these numbers here transfer down, bracket 13 and 15 repeat. Really, it's easiest to remember because this is the only one that's across from angle A. Cosine of A is going to be equal to, get out my calculator, it will roughly be equal to 0.641. And if I were doing this on a test, I might skip right to the final answer, but because I want to make sure in a lesson that you got the same thing here, if you didn't get 0.64, you may have done something wrong in your calculator, or it may be stuck on something other than degrees. A is equal to cosine inverse of this value, 0.641. A is equal to, and you should get an answer of 50.1 degrees. Moving on into example 2, I encourage you to pause the video at this point to try and see if you've got what's going on. In this case, you're trying to determine the value of angle B. Just to take a look at this, we've got 3 sides, side, 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 and we have no angles, which means we are going to be using cosine law to find the angle. We know that we're going to be looking at this. The sides which are next to it are the 13 and the 12. So let's go ahead and start with what we know. Cosine of B is what we want to find, is equal to the sides next to it squared. 13 squared plus 12 squared minus the other one across from B, which is 15 squared, all divided by 2 times these numbers repeated, 13 and 12 multiplied. Make sure that my line divides, and we should get cosine of B, pull out my calculator, this will be equal to, cosine B is equal to 0.282. This is an approximation, put a little dot to show that. B is equal to the cosine inverse of this value, cosine inverse of 0.288. B is equal to 73.6 degrees. That's it for this lesson. Quite simply, practice makes perfect. The more you do this, the easier it will get, and we've got some questions which will help you along with it. Thanks for watching, and good luck on your studies.